Documenteur, released in 1981, was directed by Franco-Belge director Agnes Varda, who is popularly known as the mother of the Nouvelle Vague. Blurring the line between documentary and fiction, Varda gives her own experiences in Los Angeles as a single mother to a fictional character, Emily Cooper, who's learning to adapt to a new life in a new city after separation from a partner. Emily is played by Sabine Mamou, Varda's editor and friend. Interestingly, Varda does not claim that the storyline completely follows that of her own life. Rather, it is the emotions portrayed in the film, which are, in her own words, powerfully autobiographical. The film, however, is still plugged by moments of Varda's own life. For example, her son, Mathieu Demy, plays the role of Emily's on-screen son, Martin. The title of the work is an oxymoron, a clever blend of the words documentaire, documentary, and monteur, liar. Varda's choice of title was not coincidental, as the film is a hybrid blend between documentary, film, and cinema. As previously stated, whilst the story is fictional, it is based on real experiences and emotions. Furthermore, while much of the film consists of edited footage of the actors, Varda incorporates a substantial number of shots of everyday citizens living their daily lives in the city. There is a particular focus on the faces of these people, on their expressions and emotions. The whole film is set against the cinema verite, a key feature in all of Varda's Nouvelle Vague work. The title is a perfect introduction to the film and allows the audience to understand the play between fact and fiction and anticipate how it might present itself within the film. The subtitle of the film, an emotion picture, is another inventive phrase, a play on the expression motion picture, which is often used to describe films. The subtitle captures the direction of the film and reminds the audience to not only analyze the plot of the film, but to dig deeper and consider the emotions as well. Documenteur comes as a direct contrast to Varda's film Mieux Mieux, released in the year before in 1980. Both are set in Los Angeles, but portray the city in two very different lights. Documenteur challenges the easygoing and creative depiction of Los Angeles seen in Mieux Mieux by portraying the gritty and impoverished side of the city, using footage of people living a less than glorious existence. A man sleeping on a bench in the laundrette, or a woman frantically searching for something in the sand. By presenting this rather dire image of Los Angeles, Varda lives up to a reputation of fighting against the cliche and invites her audience to consider the contradictions. Documenteur does not shy away from asking its audience bold questions. Important themes within the film are the search for reality, for identity. Apparent throughout the film is Emily Cooper's detachment, isolation, and loneliness, as she tries to establish a new life for herself and her son in a foreign country. At times, her struggles are seen as overtly, such as when she calls a friend in France and tearfully confesses that she is not doing well. At other times, however, her emotions and struggles are revealed more subtly. Varda draws on sound imagery just as importantly as visual imagery to communicate to the audience the sentiments and the emotions that Emily is experiencing. And the music produced by George Delerue is an important part of the film. In an interview, Varda once explained that in the second part of the film, Martin's words express Emily's desires. For example, when he says, "I want to see Daddy," or I don't want to sleep alone," he's unknowingly speaking for his mother, who says very little in the film. Even though the words are not coming directly from Emily, this allows her thoughts and emotions to be communicated indirectly to the audience. In the third part of the film, Emily's emotions are seen through footage of other people in LA, such as an unidentified waitress in a cafe or an addict sleeping on the streets. Their confusion and sadness are intended to mirror Emily's own feelings. Despite being well received by both critics and the public, the film was not a commercial success. Varda was not only able to obtain a small grant from the CNA to produce the film, and once it was released, it made almost no money at all. In fact, the film landed Varda in some debt as she refused to cut the pay of her technicians and had to repay money that she'd been lent to produce the film.
As previously mentioned, Documenteur was created to be seen along with a film called Mur, an essay film about murals in LA, which Varda shot in 1980, where she showed different painted murals around the city and interviewed the artists about their work. Varda describes the connection between the two films, saying, "One is about Los Angeles, a portrait of the city through what is shown in the street, palm trees and sun, and all these murals, and everybody expressing themselves. And then the second film, which is like a shadow of the first one, which is what you don't see in Los Angeles, the nowhere city inside the city. And that was my contradictory perception of the same city, a flamboyant place and a totally dark end of the West scene. These two films were supposed to go together." Varda successfully realizes her goal of presenting two contradictory versions of the same city. Mur depicts a happy existence of talented artists living their dream in the creative city. The mise en scène is complete with bright colours and smiling faces. In direct contrast, Documenteur shows a poorer, sleazier side of LA, in which the smiling faces are replaced with domestic disputes and funerals. Gone are the bright colours, and instead the mise en scène is replete with pastel blues and greys. It isn't a case of which version is right and which is wrong. LA is not a one-dimensional city, and Varda's works remind us that there are many different sides to LA and millions of different people there who will experience the city in completely unique ways. There are several notable links to Mur in Documenteur. One connection takes place during a scene in which two men come into the office where Emily works as a typist, looking for her boss to read their film script for them. As the employer is out, they ask Emily if she would oblige instead. When Emily starts to read the script, we realise that it is a script for Mur. Lucas Ley theorises that the replacement of a star such as Emily's boss with an everyday person such as Emily herself is a metaphor for the film, which, in a sense, turns ordinary people into stars. No high-profile actors featured in the film, and even Sabine herself was well known not for her acting but for her cinematographic work. Instead, the film chooses to focus on the normal, everyday people of Los Angeles and on their seemingly ordinary lives. As Emily incredulously listens to her voice playing, the camera films the recording material in a close-up, and the mise en abîme shows a normal person who has become a star. Another connection is a painting called The Fall of Icarus, which featured in Mur and is shown again in Documenteur. The painting, which depicts a cowboy looking at a painting of an astronaut whilst angels fly in the sky, was painted by John Wirrell in 1978. It was located in Venice in Los Angeles, but has since been destroyed. In Mur, we discover that it was intended to be a metaphor for Los Angeles, which is, and I quote, "a city planted in the desert and is underpopulated with angels." In Documenteur, the painting is shown again, briefly as a whole, and then twice as a montage of several close-ups of a cowboy, astronaut, and an angel. During the first montage, we hear the main character, Emily, saying, "The one I like, maybe because I often walk by it, it's the one with angels fallen from the sky." And a man replies, "You are the one who has fallen from the sky." These connections to Mur cause the spectator to question the reality of what they are watching. Mur was a traditional documentary where real artists were interviewed about the real paintings they were working on. Now, in Documenteur, one of the same paintings is being shown, but this time the artist is nowhere to be found, and instead a fictional man and woman are discussing the work of art. The spectator knows the painting itself to be real, but is aware that Emily, the woman discussing the painting, is not. Likewise, when Emily reads the script of Mur, the listener is aware that the script is from a real project, and yet it is being read by a fictional character. However, Emily is based off Varda herself, who certainly is real. Does this make Emily real as well? The close-up mise en abîme of the Fall of Icarus painting also causes us to question what reality is. At each close-up, the viewer looks like they have the full picture, but when the painting is seen from afar, the viewer realizes that the painting actually has several layers and is in fact a painting within a painting. Varda's ability to effectively provoke her viewers to ask big questions, such as what constitutes reality, is what makes Documenteur such a successful film.
Whilst Emily is reading and recording the script for Murmure, she admits that she does not recognise the sound of her own voice. This sentiment of identity loss is important throughout the film. Interestingly, it is not in fact her own voice, but that of Varda's, who says, "Art imitates life, or life imitates art." The extract encourages the audience to reflect on the hybrid nature of the film and encourages us to question the difference between truth and fiction. Fans of Varda's other works, such as Les Plaies d'Agnès and Visage Village, may recognize glimpses of the director's style and the importance beach imagery plays as a strong emotive motif throughout her cinema. Similarly, Documenteur is punctuated by shots of the beach. Bolchkovac remarks that these often appear after important scenes in the film, allowing the audience time to reflect. A shot of the beach follows Emily's confession that she does not recognize the sound of her own voice. We do not know whose eyes we are looking through, but we can assume that we are sharing an experience with Emily, as the shot appears to be taken from within her office. Varda's choice to cut to this shot offers an opportunity to feel Emily's sense of detachment, isolation, and loneliness that resonate with a sense of loss of identity. Varda's use of wide shots are perfectly timed, creating a distance between the audience and the scene, allowing a visual representation of how Emily is feeling lonely and isolated. In the shot, we can see people walking along the beach in a group, and then a sand plough comes across the screen, leaving behind an empty and serene view of the sea and the crashing waves. Emily is placed as an outsider. She does not interact with these people, only observes them. In the same way, the audience observes the characters on the beach from a distance. At the same time as demonstrating solitude, the scene offers the possibility for a fresh start. The plough has cleaned away the sand in the same way that Emily describes her partner slipping through her fingertips like grains of sand. Pierre Soulages describes the sea as being a blank canvas. The reflective surface gives us ourselves. Varda uses this imagery of the beach to signify a shift in mood in the film. Later in the film, when Emily's friend phones her, she informs her that she is fine, whereas before she confided in her friend that she is not holding up well as she cried on the phone. In spite of challenges that Emily faces, the audience can sense a glimmer of hope that the situation will improve for her. Noted throughout the film is the piano soundtrack played by Georges Delerue, well known for his involvement in the Nouvelle Vague cinema. Remarkably, Delerue improvised these pieces while watching the images for the first time. At points, the soundtrack appears disjointed from the scene. For example, the soundtrack over the imagery of the waves crashing builds momentum and leads the viewer to expect an impactful event to occur. Yet, at the end, the music fades out softly to show Emily getting her son ready for bed. Although it may appear anticlimactic, it captures perfectly the sentiments Varda wants to portray of Emily's life. Like the soundtrack, Emily has a sense of disconnect from her surroundings. Sound is an important feature throughout the film. Varda comments that il y a eu de la parole ou du bruit ou de la musique, jamais les trois. This lack of cohesion is parallel to Emily's difficulty to establish herself in this new environment. She too cannot unite parts of her identity as she comes to terms with the loss of her partner and finding herself in a new location. In conclusion, we would recommend Documenteur. Not only is it a touching account of a woman's search for identity exposed through the difficulties of life, separation, heartbreak, balance, and survival, it also sheds light on the fact that film or documentary making is never objective. Varda's choice to create a fictional film based closely on personal experience demonstrates how each one of us is so deeply impacted by our experiences, and these are what shape us. In addition, the film, along with Murmure, shows us a rounder picture of Los Angeles than most glamorous Hollywood do, and teaches us that life is full of contradictions. Cinematographically, the film successfully uses an array of sound and visual imagery to communicate with the audience the sentiments of the main character, Emily. The audience is left rooting for Emily. Although the film does not intend to portray an idealistic view of Los Angeles nor life, the audience understands that Emily is a strong character and are left feeling hopeful. As the son says at the end of the film, "I like it when we're sad, and then after we'll go out and dance the polka. There is still joy even after moments of sadness and hardship."